With S Curve Scoliosis, it can be really tricky to find a sleeping position that is both comfortable and good for our specific curve. In this video, I will show you the positions that you definitely want to avoid with S Curve Scoliosis and how you can make them better so you can get that good night's sleep. So the worst sleeping position for anybody really, but especially for S Curve Scoliosis, is of course sleeping on your front. And what this does is it's just putting a lot of pressure into the middle of the spine and right in that place where the curve changes direction. And what happens is you usually end up in this kind of weird position where one leg is up and you're kind of half lying on your front, half lying on your side. There's a bit of a twist in there and there's a little bit of a back bend in there as well. Not great for anyone with an S Curve Scoliosis. Now, the second worst sleeping position for S Curve Scoliosis is sleeping on your side in your scoliosis pattern, and I'm going to show you in a moment what exactly that means. Now, please remember, you are not going to make your structural scoliosis worse by sleeping in the wrong way. But with scoliosis, gravity is not your friend, unfortunately. So we do have to keep this in mind when we are sleeping on the side, that the convex sides will be pulled further down with the pull of gravity. And while you might not be making the curve actually worse, you might wake up with aches and pains in the morning, of course. So let's get into what we can do to make sure we don't sleep in our scoliosis pattern. So if you have watched this video before, you will know, of course, that it's better to sleep on your concave side than your convex side, and you always want to support the convex side if that's the side that you want to sleep on. But what do you do when you've got two curvatures, of course? What do you do with an S Curve Scoliosis? So first of all, you need to establish which one is your dominant curve, which one is your driving curve. Is it the thoracic one or is it the lumbar one? Obviously, if you've got an X-ray, great, fantastic. You know which one is the bigger curve. You might also have a diagnosis as well. The other thing that might give you some hints of where the driving curve is, the hips always shift in the opposite direction. So wherever your hip is sticking out, usually the opposite side is the driving curve. Now, please make sure you don't self-diagnose, so make sure you see a health professional about this if you are not sure, of course. Now, for me, I know my lumbar curve is the bigger curve. It's a larger curve than my thoracic curve. So my hips tend to shift over to the right. So I know this for myself. So I know I need to sleep on my right side, which is the concave side. Now, of course, if your dominant curve is the thoracic curve, so let's say you've got a major right thoracic curve with just a lumbar compensation curve, what you could do, of course, is sleep on the concave side, first of all, of your dominant curve. So that would be your left side. And then you could also support your lumbar curve with a little bit of a rolled up blanket. Now, this obviously needs to correspond to however severe your scoliosis is. But the aim of this is that you have a lovely distribution of pressure when you are lying on your side. So what I would not recommend is supporting the thoracic curve in any way. You could try this out, but in my opinion, it doesn't feel very good. It puts pressure onto the ribs and the rib cage when you are lying on the side. Remember, the best position is really the one that you can sleep in, because sleep is so important, and getting a good night's sleep is the most important thing. Now, obviously, what do you do if you've got a double curve, a double major curve, where the cob angles of the thoracic and the lumbar are very similar, where there's not a big difference really between those two curves? So in this case, your hips might not be shifted over to one side or the other, because there is no driving curve, there is no major curvature. So what do you do then? In that case, you would go by what your lumbar curve is doing. So if it was a curve like this, where the lumbar is kind of doing the same thing as the thoracic and maybe much more severe than what I've got, I would be sleeping on my right side, of course. So I would sleep on the concave side of my lumbar curve. So the reason for this is, you can probably see this, I would much more sink into my lumbar curve here, which is bringing this into a much better position on this side. Whereas in the thoracic, I'm not really sinking that much because this is all protected by the rib cage. So this is why you always want to go by what your lumbar curve is saying, really. Now, avoiding the wrong sleeping position, of course, doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to get a good night's sleep, because you might still be tossing and turning in bed. So this next video is a short yoga practice, which is essential to reset the body at the end of the day and get yourself all ready for bed and getting that good night's sleep.